Serious. What is something scary that has happened to you that you cannot explain rationally? My family owns a decent-sized horse boarding facility, and when we first had it going, we used to do bed check as a family. Bed check is just making sure all the lights and fans were off, as well as looking at the horses for injuries and if they had blankets during the winter. Well, we had just got back from eating out, and it was a moonless night during fall. As we stepped out of the truck, this large light gray mass stood up and took off loping towards our pastures. It was about the size of a single cab pickup truck. It made no noises other than it hitting the ground as it ran. The only other proof that it was real to us was the horses that were turned out that night, screamed and stampeded across the pasture it had jumped into. We did a double count of all the horses that night, and not a single one was missing. I still have yet to see it again, and I hope I never do, or at least there is some explanation for it. This happened 3 times with 3 different people. I grew up in a 2-story house in the Philippines. Upstairs, there was a huge playroom and 4 bedrooms. When I was around 11 years old, me and my babysitter were hanging out in the playroom. She went to the bathroom, and I got bored, so I went downstairs to check out the fridge. I heard her come out of the bathroom, and she started screaming my name. After the 3rd time, she stopped. I thought she figured out that I was downstairs. After a few minutes, I saw her coming down the stairs. As she looked at me, she froze and just stared at me. I asked her what's wrong, and she said she just saw me in the playroom before she went downstairs. She was really freaked out about it, and I don't know. I used to not believe in these things, so I just laughed at her. The 2nd time it happened, I was probably 16. I was hanging out at my brother's room cause it's the room with the fastest internet. And then I heard my 6-year-old brother, I have 2 brothers, calling me and looking around for me. I didn't answer back and just waited for him to find me. I saw him go in my room, and then he got quiet. I thought he was looking for something and just found it. As he was walking out of my room, he saw me in my brother's room, and he just froze and stared like my babysitter. I asked him what's wrong, and he said, "Why are there 2 of you?" And that's when I freaked out and ran to my mom's room. She laughed at us, but I remember sleeping in her room that night. The last time it happened was when I was 20. My parents went on vacation with my youngest brother, so me and my other siblings had to stay at my grandparents'. The first night they were away, me and my sister decided to go home and get more clothes. We were both in my room, cause she likes to borrow some of my clothes, and I told her that I'm going to take a shower. That's when she left and went to her room to pack more clothes. I went to the bathroom and started brushing my teeth. As I was about to get in the shower, my sister walked in the bathroom and she looked at me so weirdly. And her face turned pale, so I asked her what's wrong. She said she went back to my room and she was talking to me, but then she had to pee, so she went to the bathroom and found me there. We both looked at each other, grabbed our stuff, and left. I still don't know why or what it is, but it still creeps me out when I think about it. So much weird stuff like this has happened to my family over the years. Particularly with my mom. Below are a couple fan favorites. 1. My parents had been married for maybe a month. They were in bed sound asleep when all of a sudden, my mom jumps up and wakes up my dad. "Jimmy. Jimmy. There's red everywhere. We have to help them. Please." My dad tried his best to calm her down and figure out what she was talking about. My mom had explained that she saw a car with a German license plate on the side of the road. That there had been an accident and they needed help. My dad tried to console her, to explain that it was all just a bad dream, but she wasn't having it. So to appease her, they got in the car and drove to the spot my mom thought the accident was. And sure enough, at the exact spot my mom said, there was a car on the side of the road with German plates and emergency flashers on. Upon closer investigation, there was nobody in the car. If they needed help, help had already come. 2. My parents had just had their first child, my oldest sister, Kathy. They had been living in Italy at the time. My dad was in the Air Force and had brought her back to the US to introduce her to the grandparents, my dad's parents. So their first night there, my mom was asleep in the front bedroom, jet-lagged. My dad had gone out to hang out with his brothers. And in the middle of the night, this woman walks into my mom's room, waking her up. She sits down on the bed and says, "SHH, it's okay. I just wanted to welcome you to the family." My mom was scared, obviously, but figured this was some relative or family friend or something that came over. The woman walks over to the bassinet where my baby sister was sleeping. "Is this your daughter?" My mom nodded. "She's beautiful. It's lovely to meet you both." And then she leaves. My mom wakes up the next day and is having breakfast with my grandmother when she brings it up. Who was the woman that came over last night? My grandmother had no idea what she was talking about. My mom told her the whole story and my grandmother asked what she looked like. My mom said she was tall, had long white hair and was wearing a blue dress. My grandmother's face went as white as a sheet. She rummaged through some old pictures and pulled one out. "Is this her?" she asked my mom, who nodded in return. "That's my mother. She's been dead for 20 years and we buried her in a blue dress." Hunter Mountaineer here. It was a chilly December morning. I hiked in pre-dawn, taking about an hour and a half to go 3 miles off the beaten trails. Got to my nest about half an hour before sunrise and started to settle in. The wind kicked up and a fog rolled in that was thicker than milk. Within a few minutes, my visibility was 5. I'm sitting tight, huddled up against a freezing wind when I start to hear twigs snapping close to me. For no apparent reason, what is normally a rapturous sound indicative of an imminently successful hunt sent a frosty chill down my spine. I chambered around in my lever-action 30-30 as quietly as I could and lay flat on my back tucked against a fallen tree. The rustling was moving closer through the fog, but I couldn't see anything. The sun was starting to peek over the mountains to my east and visibility was starting to increase. The rustling of twigs and leaves was sporadic, sometimes directly in front of me, sometimes behind or beside me. I remember laying there, rifle across my chest, thinking to myself how silly it was to react like such a coward. I rationed with myself that bears and mountain lions are a rarity where I was, and I had likely stumbled into a herd of whitetail that had bedded down. I decided to sit up. The rustling stopped immediately. As it was fully dawn by now, I was looking through the fog for the outline of my prey, which I had assured myself was literally all around me. It wasn't. Seemingly, nothing was. By now, the fog had faded away and it was apparent to me that I was alone in those woods. I hunted all that day without seeing so much as a squirrel. Around 3 in the afternoon, after fighting the wind and an abnormally cold day and not wanting to hike out by flashlight, I decided it was time to start back to the truck. Walking out of those woods was the most uneasy I have ever felt. Lawfully, once you make it back to the trail, you're supposed to clear the chamber of your rifle. Not that day. What is normally a stroll through the woods, I undertook with the seriousness of an animal being stalked. I would walk, then stop and listen. I never heard or saw anything during my retreat, but I could feel eyes on me. I was about 100 feet away from my truck when I rounded the last corner and saw, hanging at eye level from a tree by a noose, a stuffed bear in a blaze orange jacket. I'm a giant broad-shouldered outdoorsman, but that one shook me something fierce. Used to be a security guard on a campus that was a military fort since the Revolution. It was updated throughout the years and was last used in World War II, which by then the campus was bristling with artillery and earth concrete bunkers, as well as many brick and mortar buildings. When it became a college campus, the barracks, hospital, officer's house, everything was converted to classrooms and dorms. There was one building on campus, a hotel where students learned bartending and hotel services, that was infamous for being haunted. My shift was 11 p.m. to 7 a.m., starting at midnight, the last coworker left, and I had the entire campus to myself. My job was to make sure everything was locked and lights were off, and to scare off any drunks or potheads trying to get into the old concrete bunkers. But that hotel, it rarely had living guests. I would go through the building and turn off all the lights, only to turn around an hour later and see a light on again. I would stand in the hotel lobby after patrolling and confirming I was alone and hear things moving on the floor above me. I heard a chain dragging across the room above me, then a distant scream. One night, I had another officer with me for once, and as we were talking in the lobby, the temperature dropped and we heard a little girl giggling. In the basement, I would see shadows dart across the conference room. However, the biggest thing that made me nope out was when I was in the lobby and looked up the staircase. I saw a woman's legs with black shoes walk from the right to left on the next floor up and straight through a wall. Keep in mind that's just the hotel. It used to be the officers' quarters. Stories say an officer died of the flu around World War II, and before that a man was executed during the Revolution for being accused of being a spy. Like most hauntings, however, I do not know how much truth the stories hold. I didn't even talk about the voices I heard in the basement of the old hospital or the shadow people wandering the colonial graveyard in the middle of the campus. Footsteps following me in the darkness, faces staring at me from the bunker ruins, all of which I would check and make sure it wasn't just kids trying to hide from me. I miss that place. I live in a condominium and we own 2 apartments on the 7th and 8th floor. The only way to move in between them is to step out of the apartment, take the elevator or the staircase and enter the other one. One night, we ran out of ice cream upstairs and my mom told me to go get some from the downstairs freezer, so I took the keys to the 7th floor's apartment and since it was dinner time, no one was there. I walked into the pitch dark and realized that someone was sitting on the sofa, so I flipped the switch to see my dad just sitting there. It was kind of weird, but I just went to get the ice cream and asked if he had a key to lock up. No answer. I shrugged and thought, well, if he came in and locked the door behind him, he must have one. Went back upstairs and my dad was sitting there eating dinner. I freaked out and asked how the heck did he get up here so fast, and everyone told me that he's been here all this time. Told them it wasn't possible cause I just saw him downstairs, but no one believed me. Now I never go down there alone. Edit. To clear up some stuff, each of our apartment doors are fitted with 3 types of locks. There's a gate which has its own keyhole and lock, we put another lock in it, so you have to unlock this gate twice. Then there's the door and its own lock. So you need 3 keys just to enter our house if no one is inside. I did get a good look at, and it was 100% my father. He's kind of fat and has this serious looking face, so it's kind of hard to mistake him. The apartments are not accessible because not only are they not on the same floor, they aren't even located on top of each other. There's an elevator in between them and they are on different floors. So there is no way for anyone to go up or down without first meeting at the elevator or the staircase. When I was a kid, my brother and I would get stuck with babysitting the neighbor's kid. His name was Alex. Alex was really fond of my Lego set that I had in the corner of my room facing the window. He would play for hours, staying preoccupied, while my brother and I would play video games in the living room. So one night, when I fell asleep on the couch while babysitting, my brother came to me and said, "Alex is under your bed and shaking." I asked, "What's wrong with him?" My brother told me to follow him into the room and try to talk him back out from under the bed. I go inside to find him on the verge of tears as he was trembling profusely under my bed. I asked Alex, "What's wrong? Why are you under there?" Alex whimpered, "Him," while looking at my sliding closet. As I walked toward the bed in order to help him out, he ran all the way back over to his house and waited on his front steps until his parents got home. Now, my parents were out to dinner with his, and he explained the whole story in detail to both his parents and mine. His explanation sent shivers down my spine when my brother and I left the house to meet up with his parents and find out what happened. My mom told me that Alex was playing with my Legos and hear a slight murmur from my closet, something that resembled a faint vocalization of, "Come here." He said that he looked behind him and noticed the closet had a slight opening with light peering in from my lamp. He stared at the crack until he saw an eyelid open. He told us that there was a man in my closet. Alex then hid under my bed after he gave out a slight yelp, which attracted my brother's attention. My family rushes back into my house and into my room. In horror, we find my closet door rocked open and a few things missing. My window had been left open when it was previously closed, and a few things knocked over which had not been touched previously. We still don't know what force we were reckoning after that evening. Thank God nothing more severe happened.